Namaste and greetings. I, Rishmita Shah, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, Prabhav Evam Niti Ansandhan, Sansthan, Nai Delhi. Extend my warmest welcome to you all at IMPRI Web Policy Learning. Today marks the second day of Ending Gender-Based Violence, Cohort 3, Challenges and Responses, an online national autumn school program, which is a 4-week online immersive certificate training course. This program is organized by the Gender Impact Studies Center, GISC, at IMPRI, New Delhi. It continues our commitment to addressing the mitigating gender-based violence through informed discourse, policy analysis, and community engagement. Building on the foundation laid by the 2 previous cohorts, this cohort develops deeper into multifaceted challenges that impede progress in eradicating gender-based violence. It also explores the responses required from various stakeholders, including governments, civil society, and international organizations. The panel for this program is composed of distinguished experts and seasoned veterans who will be sharing their expertise with us. The distinguished expert panel includes Advocate Flavia Agnes, women's right lawyer, co-founder, Majlis Legal Center, Mumbai. Dr. Keerthi Bollineni, President, Vasavaya Mahila Mandali, Vijayawada. Dr. Indira Chakravarty, Public Health Researcher, Guest Facility, Public Health Program, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar University, Delhi. Miss Yagna Parmar, Director of Vacha Resource Center for Girls at Vacha Charitable Trust. Advocate Dr. Albertina Almeida, lawyer and human rights activist, Goa, visiting senior fellow at IMPRI. Ms. Anuradha Kapoor, founder and director of Swayam, Ending Violence Against Women. Advocate Celine Thomas from an advocate at Celine Thomas and Associates, Bengaluru, visiting faculty senior fellow at IMPRI. Dr. Suneha Kanpal, senior consultant, International Center for Research on Women, gender integration consultant, Global Center for Gender Equality. Dr. Amar Jesani, independent researcher and teacher, editor, Indian Journal of Medical Ethics, visiting senior fellow at IMPRI. Dr. Veena Vaswani, professor, Department of Forensic Medicine, Director Center for Ethics, Program Director, YUFIC, Masters in Research for Ethics for India. Advocate Audrey D'Amelio, Director, Majlis Legal Center, Mumbai, visiting senior fellow, IMPRI. Dr. Padma Diosthali, Program Director, Creating Resources for Empowerment in Action. Ms. Jayashri Velankar, Director, Jagori. Dr. Anand Ban, MBBS, MHSC, Researcher in Global Health Policy, Bioethics, and Mental Health. Anushka Virk, Research Assistant, I Hear Access Matters, Sangad, Public Mental Health NGO at Bhopal. The chair for this program is Professor Vibhuti Patel, visiting distinguished professor at IMPRI, Vice President, Indian Association of Women's Studies, former Professor of Economics, Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai. The conveners for this program are Advocate Dr. Shalu Nigam, visiting senior fellow at IMPRI, advocate, author, and researcher on gender and human rights. Professor Gumadi Sridevi, visiting professor, IMPRI. Dr. Smiti Mehta, Simi Mehta, CEO and editorial director at IMPRI, and Dr. Arjun Kumar, director at IMPRI, New Delhi. Proceeding further, I heartily welcome you all to the third cohort of Ending Gender-Based Violence, Challenges and Responses. We have also shared a course outline and reading resources via email for your reference and perusal. Before we start today's sessions, here are the housekeeping rules. It is imperative that you join the meeting on time. There will be a Q&A session after each presentation. Share your questions in the Q&A box and not in the chat box. The questions must not be posted as an anonymous attendee. Ensure that your questions are precise. Refrain from making general comments in the question to save time. Without any further ado, I would like to invite our chair, Professor Vibhuti Patel ji, for the opening remarks. We welcome you, ma'am. Over to you.
Ma'am, you're on mute.
Ma'am's video got stuck. Ma'am, are we audible?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Go on.
Yeah. Okay. In between the connectivity band. Okay. Yeah. So we are now on day 2. My heartfelt thanks to Dr. Arjun Kumar, Dr. Simi Mehta, Ms. Priyanka Negi, Vaishali Singh, Satyam Tripathi, and welcome Dr. Keerthi Bollineni. And thank you, moderators, Rishmita Shah. Yesterday's recap that we began with the overview of women's efforts, collective efforts against gender-based violence. And we saw that in the recent years, as the discussion on violence against women has acquired greater visibility, there is a realization that this violence is enacted and embedded in the wider context of growing inequalities, social hierarchies, and gender-based prejudices. Further, it is evident today to show that in 3 decades since the initiation of the new economic policy and market-driven model, more and more precarity of women in general and the popular masses, we have seen the violence in different forms has escalated. Gender gaps have widened. Social inequalities, including those premised on historically determined exclusions, have deepened in numerous ways. And these inequalities are manifested in various types of violence, and gender-based violence is one of them. And what we see is that major plank of which is the women's struggle. They have focused on sexual violence, discrimination, sexual harassment at workplace, and also systemic and structural violence that happens because of discriminatory practices in our society. Now it has gained further impetus since 2012, mainly because after the Nirbhaya tragedy, because gender-based violence and sexual violence against girls and boys, women and gender minorities has occupied the minds not only of feminists, but also young adults in India. These debates, perhaps the most intense and widespread in recent history, encompass vastly different sections of societies, movements, and organizations, and sought to address multiple sides of violence extended across regions, social classes, and communities. And during the pandemic, mind-boggling problem of natal violence also got highlighted due to more than really 200,000 distress calls, which various helplines by the state governments and the National Commission for Women had received. Now, all this point to the fact that women, children, and LGBTQIA communities are directly in line of fire in the current scenario. The presentation and the keynote address by Advocate Flavia Agnes provided profile of efforts of women's movement since 1980s of collectively confronting violence both in public and private realm. She took up 5 important milestones in the women's movement: fight against sexual violence in response to uniformed policemen raping a teenage tribal girl, Mathura. Second aspect of her own experiences and the journey of domestic violence, from personal to public, how the personal experience of domestic violence resulted in social agenda of the women's organization and demand for laws and systems and support structures for survivors of domestic violence emerged. She also spoke about the dowry murders that now with the consumerist culture and also results into the unequal equation where the bride plus dowry is equal to groom. And that also creates so many lives of newly married women have been lost. She spoke about operational dimensions of Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act 2005. And she said that this is the act which is so comprehensive, which provides both civil and preventive remedies, but the lack of infrastructure and bureaucratic lethargy and lack of political will in so many states that we have witnessed that this act has not been judiciously implemented. She spoke about the court procedures and they said that how we need to negotiate with the criminal justice system, with the police, the meticulous detailing that is required for as evidences for the court procedures. And after that, she also spoke about the pre-birth elimination of girl child and the struggle of over 3 decades to fight against sex-selective abortion. She gave the trajectory of the whole campaign against sex selection. And still we know, if you read today's papers, there have been reports that in Karnataka, in the Mandya district, massive number of sex selective abortions have been reported in the recent times, and the organizations such as Vimujna have taken up this issue. Sexual harassment at workplace, which the World Bank has declared as a most devastating occupational hazard of the 21st century, because women are entering all sectors of the economy and at all levels of work life. They are there, and the backlash of violence and discrimination comes in the form of sexual harassment. And functioning of internal committees in so many places, it is not up to the mark, but still the efforts, the capacity building is required. That's what Flavia said. She also mentioned prevention of Prevention of Sati Act in 1987, because of the so many incidences of glorification of widow burning that happens. And she said that this needs to be taken very seriously in the context of the revivalism and the cultural, in the name of culture, so many antiquated practices are again revived and valorized. She also highlighted challenges faced due to inadequate infrastructural facilities for the judicious implementation of so many progressive laws we have been able to get right from 1976 Equal Remuneration Act till the date. Patriarchal mindset of judiciary. She gave several examples of how judiciary, after doing all the hard work of arguing the course, just couple of sentences by the judges, which would be very patriarchal and prejudicial against women, they determine they wipe out all the good work that is done by feminist lawyers. She also talked about the prejudices of the police and the political interference, and she concluded her keynote address with a powerful message that it is our duty to give support and hope to survivors through our actions individually as well as collectively. Thank you. And now over to the IMPRI team.
Thank you, ma'am, for providing such a thorough and detailed recap of the program. Moving forward, I would like to invite Dr. Keerthi Bollineni, women's rights lawyer and co-founder, Majlis Legal Center, Mumbai. He will present the talk on women's collective efforts against domestic violence. Welcome. The floor is yours.
I just want to change that. I'm Dr. Keerthi. I'm not a lawyer. I'm a social development professional from Andhra Pradesh, Vasavya Mahila Mandali. Yeah.
Sorry for the
Yeah, it's okay. Can you just my slides?
I'm not in favor of.
Good evening, everybody. Before the slides start, I just want to tell you that why do we need collectives and all those things. But what we require as women is we should be bold enough to raise our voice as individually and as a collective. That is what lacking nowadays. Just remember our freedom movement. If the one voice of Mahatma Gandhi is not raised in South Africa, I don't know whether India might have been free from the colonial rule. So that's why we need to have a second freedom struggle where we need to talk about the freedom for the woman with responsibility, with dignity, and with respect. Yeah. Today, I'm focusing on women's collective efforts against domestic violence. It's a very important topic, as Professor Vibhuti Patel has told, that it's very, very essential. We all see and read and also experience domestic violence in our own lives and in our neighborhood and in our friends' corridors. Next. What is that? Pink saris and holding the hands high. Many might have heard or not even heard. Let us know more about the Gulabi Dalam. They used to call it in Uttar Pradesh. So that's what a women's collective. So what is women's collective? Women's collective is a group of women who meet regularly to achieve a shared purpose, often to promote women's empowerment and social justice. What this Gulabi Dalam or Pink the group, what they did is, whenever there is a domestic violence in their own localities, they used to raise the voice, and with a group they used to go and fight for the justice. Next. Why women's collective? Because we all know that what is the power of individual and what is the power of the collective. So women's collectives are very, very important because they help women to fight for their rights, build solidarity, and address inequalities. Yes, I can raise my voice as individually, but when I raise as collective, it has much more strength and it has much more meaning. That why the collectives are required is to address the inequalities, often target inequalities in the representation of women and their interests, and build solidarity, help women to build a strong union and grow as individual and as a collective. We are seeing both in the non-formal sector and also in the formal sector, where women are becoming stronger through unions. Might be a trade union, might be a self-help group union, and many others which we are seeing it. Some are formalized, some are not yet formalized. And the third one is empowerment. In a practical level, that's very essential, because many of us have studied social work, sociology, or women's studies, but we have also studied from a theoretical point of view. But in a practical level, what is a woman empowerment? Because there is a thin line or a thick line, whatever we call it, in a practical sense. And increase the confidence, help women increase their confidence in advocating for their rights, communicating, and speak out. That is what lacking in our society. Because I can tell very confidently now before all of you that I am a survivor of domestic violence. Even I have a very good education, coming from a freedom fighters family, coming from a politically affluent family, even though I faced 7 years of domestic violence. So people, those who face domestic violence, we feel that it's a social stigma. We never come out of it and we never even talk of it. So what is required from the woman is to talk confidently about their situations and talk about the crisis they have faced. And also the very important thing is how we had come up from that crisis. Very, very important that resilience building how it has happened as an individual and as with the support of the collective. Collective might be even a family also is a collective. Why we are talking more of the women's groups nowadays is we have lost the beauty of the joint family system. That's why we need to have the women's groups and also the collectives to come together and support our cause. Next. How women's collectives form? I want to give you three varieties of examples, what the women's collectives I told, and why it is, and how it can be formed at what levels. Grassroots movement in Tamil Nadu in 1994, 6 women, they have led the organization, and its mission is to promote equality, social justice, and women's rights. It's a grassroots level movement which has built a momentum by bringing many other women together and to do it. And the second one is circles of discussions. Women come together and they discuss. In remote villages and poor marginalized areas have formed collectives to discuss their issues that matter to them, such as food rations, and they are not getting a ration regularly, or the quality of the ration is not good, because women feel that cooking food is one of their priority at the household level as a responsibility. And also when they don't have toilets to go for a open defecation, how much problem they are facing, they discuss. And also when the schools are not safe for their own children, they discuss about it. So these collectives have sometimes formed regional federations that have created institutions like literacy schools and women's sports. These are very popular. The women's sports are very, very popular. This came out of the circles of discussion of the particular issue. They take it up and also they discuss, and there came out the women's sports. And the third one is formalized institutions, how it has formed. I am currently the president of Vasavya Mahila Mandali, but it is formed in 1969 by 3 sisters, my mom and her 2 sisters, and grown into a formal women-led organization with a vision: empower every woman, child, and family by increasing happiness and ensuring a sustainable society with human values. So you will be seeing now 3 types of the women's collectives. One is a grassroots level movement. The other one is a circles of discussion which has went into an initiative like women's sports or literacy schools. And the third one is formed with an informal group, but became like a systematized professional organization. Next, please. The power of women's collective action. What is the power and why do we require it? When women collectively act, they often target their action to redress inequalities in the representation of women and women's interest. Recently, we got through our parliament that 33% reservation for the women, but the 73rd and 74th constitutional amendment we got at the local self-government level, whether it be village or a district or in the middle, the taluk level. So this is why it got it is not with an individual or not with one institution of parliament, but there's a lot of pressure from the women's groups and also feminist organizations, the need for the women's representation in our legislature at the state level and also at the national level. And the second one is qualitative evidence from interviews with more than 100 self-help members suggests that women's collective action is often oriented towards 2 core goals. So those 2 core goals are, one is reducing the incidence of violence against women. That's very, very essential. Most of you might be knowing the women's self-help groups. Otherwise, I'll tell you that the women's self-help groups is started in Andhra Pradesh with few groups, but then it became like a nationwide program where it addresses the core values or core goals are, one is reducing the incidence of violence against women. And Second one is demanding more effective programmatic delivery of core public services, water, sanitation, health, food security. We all know women's self-help groups had a thrift and credit groups, but why the thrift and credit came into existence is the core goal is one is reducing violence against women and also to demand and get and win the deliveries of public service system relating to water, sanitation, food, health, and all these things. Next. There are 7 strategies for preventing violence against women. Because the first core goal is preventing violence against. What are the 7 strategies which the women's collectives can form, achieve it? Through relationship skills. That's very important. It needs to have, when we talk if a collective or to get anything to demand, we need to have the skills, we need to have the strategies. So one is, we need to have the skills and the relationships building. Second one is strengthened empowerment of women's services, which is very, very essential. Unless and otherwise the women's services are strengthened, we cannot talk of the empowerment of the women. And the third one is poverty reduction. We know that poverty reduction is also in the prime of the Sustainable Development Goals. It's also the prime strategy for preventing violence against women. And we hear of dowry deaths. Why we call of dowry deaths? It might be one of the selfish motives of having a materialistic life in life, and also the poverty issues are also culminating towards the dowry deaths. And environment made safe child and adolescent abuse. Day in and day out, we are all seeing that the children are being abused and there's no safety. And although we have a POCSO law, why there is? Because the patriarchal mindsets and male mindset of power, which is making the children to be the succumbing to these circumstances. And the second, I can say very clearly that it needs to have a political will to implement all these policies relating to POCSO or domestic violence. And even POSH Act also, which is for a workplace. And prevented transformed attitudes, beliefs, and norms, which is the core of anything if you have to work towards reducing the violence against women. It's core, whether violence against women at home, at work, and at public spaces. And respect women outline steps for a public health. Even today, after 78 years of independence, we are talking of girl-child marriages. Children are becoming mothers, and children are being abused, and teenage pregnancies. And to reach the STDs is not too far. It's another 6 years only we have to reach. But can we reach it with the same attitudes which we have now with the patriarchal mindsets? And the human rights approach to scaling up prevention of violence against women. Women's rights are not different from the human rights. Human rights are women's rights and women's rights are human rights. So we should all keep in mind that whenever we are strategizing any interventions or strategizing any kind of a movements or campaigns, we should keep in mind that it should be a rights-based one where we can fight towards this. If the policies are there, laws are there, but the implementation gaps relating to political will and also attitudes of the, just now also we discussed relating the police. Recently, I went to All India Institute of Medical Sciences for a forensic discussion. So there, one of the doctors telling that one of the, in the OBG department, when they get any kind of teenage pregnancy below 18, it's treated in the POCSO as a rape. So then they immediately refer the case to the forensic department, and the forensic department raise a complaint to the police. and the police come and tell them that, why you are making a lot of noise? You just keep quiet. So if this is the attitude of our uniformed force, then how do we bring justice for our sisters and daughters? Very, very difficult. So what is required is the political will for the strict implementation of the laws is very, very essential. Next, please. I just want to, because till now I talked so much, I want to give you a pass with regard to a women's collective to address violence against women and girls, which we have initiated in Andhra Pradesh, so that that will be in English, where you can watch it and see that the outcome of this initiative also. Go ahead. No, you play the video.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Is the sound is there?
Detecting and resolving violence against them. Mahila Mitra is a social initiative aimed at empowering women in preventing, detecting and resolving violence against them. This initiative took shape by joining hands with Vijayawada City Police in Andhra Pradesh on 24th January 2017, the International Girl Child Day. Vasavya Mahila Mandali as lead organization works together with Vijayawada City Police, community women and men, educational institutions, women's self-help groups, other stake and non-stakeholders.
స్త్రీలలో కూడా వాళ్ళలో న్యూనత భావం లేకుండా నేను ఒంటరిగా ఉన్న స్త్రీనైనా నేను ముందుకెళ్ళగలను అనే ఒక భావంతో మేము ఒక 2 సంవత్సరాలుగా మహిళా మిత్ర అనే ఒక సామాజిక ఉద్యమాన్ని మొదలుపెట్టాము. దీనిలో స్త్రీలని చైతన్యవంతులు చేస్తూ సహకారం ఇచ్చే పురుషులతో కూడా చేస్తూ విజయవాడ సిటీ పోలీస్తో కలిసి ఒక కార్యక్రమాన్ని రూపొందించడం జరిగింది.
Vasavya Mahila Mandali created awareness among police that the distress faced by women in coping up with abusive relationships within family could be dealt better through community rather than through direct police intervention. That was how a safety network for women in Vijayawada evolved. Mahila Mitra committees were formed with about 200 men and women in 21 police stations at Vijayawada. 8,120 support group members and cops were trained on gender-based violence, laws, cybercrime, safety, life skills and self-defense.
ఒక ఇద్దరు కానిస్టేబుల్స్ని అక్కడ వాళ్ళ సమస్యలు రాగానే వాళ్ళు రిసీవ్ చేసుకోవడం, ఆ కానిస్టేబుల్స్ని కూడా కొంచెం ఎడ్యుకేట్ చేస్తాం మేము. వాళ్ళు రాగానే ఎలా రిసీవ్ చేసుకోవాలి, ఎలా మాట్లాడాలి, కాస్త మంచినీళ్ళు ఇవ్వటమా, మంచినీళ్ళు తాగుతారా, వాళ్ళ సమస్యలు వచ్చినప్పుడు వాళ్ళని కొంచెం ఆదుకున్నట్టుగా ఉండాలి, ఎలా ఉండాలి చేయాలని వాళ్ళకి మేమే ట్రైనింగ్ ఇస్తాం.
At every police station, 2 women constables are appointed to ensure that there is always a female cop present to listen to the complaints from women. With Mahila Mitra support, the department could amicably resolve issues of 79% of women in crisis.
మాకు ఇదివరకు సర్వీస్ చేయాలన్న ఒక ఆలోచన ఉన్నా కూడా మాకు సరైన ప్లాట్ఫామ్ దొరక్క మేము హౌస్ వైఫ్స్గానే ఉన్నామండి. ఈ విఎంఎం ద్వారా మాకు ఒక చక్కని ప్లాట్ఫామ్ ఉంది. ఒక సొసైటీకి మేము ఎంతో కొంత మా వంతు సాయం చేస్తున్నామని ఒక తృప్తి మిగిల్చిందండి.
Mahila Mitra also focuses on addressing issues where certain public places are women unfriendly. The motive is to identify these problem areas, bring them to the notice of police and other stakeholders and get them resolved. Mahila Mitra also visits schools, colleges, workplaces and women community groups to speak about women rights, activism and create awareness about the laws for women. Yet another innovative initiative of Mahila Mitra was to bring eve teasers to the counseling centers or police stations and counsel them along with their families. A lot of transformation took place among these young men. These unconventional approaches that focus on reformation of youth rather than punishing them has been applauded by many.
తప్పు చేసిన వాడిని నువ్వు దోషి అని నిలబెట్టడమే కాదు, నీలో పరివర్తన రావాలి. అలాగే తల్లిదండ్రులు కూడా మీ పిల్లల మీద మీరు కొంచెం బాధ్యత వహించండి. తల్లిదండ్రులు ఏం చేయాలి అని తల్లిదండ్రులకు కూడా కౌన్సిలింగ్ ఇవ్వడం వలన దీనిలో చాలా మార్పు వచ్చింది.
Women are now far more comfortable and confident in entering police stations in Vijayawada city or approach any police at public places to raise their grievances.
ఇదివరకు బయటికి రావాలంటే అసలు చాలా మంది సంకోచించేవాళ్ళు మాలో ముస్లిమ్స్లో. ఇప్పుడు మహిళా మిత్ర వచ్చిన కాడి నుంచి వాళ్ళలో కూడా మేము కూడా వస్తున్నాము, వాళ్ళలో కూడా తీసుకొస్తున్నాం, వాళ్ళలో కూడా మా వాళ్ళలో కూడా చాలా ధైర్యంగా వస్తుంది.
The idea of conducting Mahila Mitra meetings at the police stations sensitized the Vijayawada police force itself.
Common prevailing perception is police is not to be trusted. Generally, cutting across all sections of the society, and particularly so women section of the society. But today, after this, initiative, Mahila Mitra, which has been initiated, this program, you find groups of women coming to the police station, sitting in the police station and conducting meetings and deliberating how to go ahead in partnership with the police. So that is the kind of change which has, impacted within the police department as well as in the communities. Today the communities, they feel comfortable to walk into any police station. And thanks to this Mahila Mitra initiative, we must really appreciate and thank Vasava Mahila Mandali for taking the lead in this.
ఎంత చేంజ్ అంటే ప్రతి స్టేషన్లో ఉండేటువంటి స్టేషన్ ఇన్ఛార్జ్ సిఐ కూడా సర్కిల్ ఇన్స్పెక్టర్ కూడా ఇది నా బాధ్యత అనుకొని చేస్తున్నారు. అది నిజంగా గ్రేట్ సక్సెస్ మా మహిళా మిత్ర.
సమస్యల్లో ఉన్న స్త్రీలకి దే నీడ్ ఎ బంచ్ ఆఫ్ సర్వీసెస్. Standalone services are not at all enough. Tarvata, it is not a lip service. What we have to give is a service with passion.
The Mahila Mitra impact, triggering change in the attitude and behavior of women, making them confident and courageous, preparing them to face any kind of crisis with the support network. No silence for violence.
On the PPT, please. Thank you so much for watching. Maybe during the question and answer sessions, you can ask if anything is required also. Let me go with the slides now. What India needs is a collective action to combat violence against women. Everybody nowadays is talking of the Calcutta incident. And in Vijayawada, we are talking of a celebrity who was brought by the police to the city, and she was violently being handled by the police and also by the politicians. So two different narratives on women doing as collectives is, one is the women-led development and the second one is development that not only benefits women but that is driven by women's leadership. One is a women-led development and the other one is it's a driven by women's leadership. So the second has continued bubble under political visits. violence against women in the private, public, and online sphere is still rampant in India and limits the extent to which women feel safe to participate in public life. Because now we should talk about not only the private and public spaces, but we should talk of online spaces. And it's going to be much more if we don't be cautious through women's collectives to work towards the online abuse and online harassment and bullying. So this is very rampant. So the second of driven by the women's leadership is very, very essential. Yes, many men will not agree for it, but this is the time where women has to come up and show their skills and show their mettle that we are the leaders. We prove ourselves as change makers and go ahead. Next. I wrote NRLM. What is NRLM? National Rural Livelihood Missions. Recently, in my few slides, before I told about women's self-help groups, they normally work, although after 25, 30 years of their existence, they are mostly confined to thrift and credit, that is financial transactions, and we can even call it economic empowerment of the women. But what the Rural Livelihood Mission has done recently is that they have initiated to address the intimate partner violence. How do the self-help groups can address these aspects looking through a gender lens? So the learning from the pathways is that livelihoods programs can integrate within their mandate and the issues of addressing intimate partner violence. That's a domestic violence. And moving forward, this would not only ensure violence-free lives for the millions of women members of SHGs and CBOs, but would also enable their economic participation. What we are seeing in the communities in a practical way is women, when they are economically growing, they are facing a lot of violence in the families. And also their ATM cards are taken and their bank balance are becoming zero when the men become too violent to grab their finances. So that's why we should integrate the violence against women, especially intimate partner violence, with the economic empowerment of the women. Then only it is stable. Next page. With regard to NRLM, I'll add one more. I have developed a module with 17 sections. They call it 17 modules, which relates to most of the rights, education, legal, and also what kind of a services it is. And also they asked all the states to act on the gender and train the village officer organizers on the gender modules so that it can percolate to the grassroots level and also initiate the gender resource centers in each district where the women, when they face any kind of problem, they can approach that gender resource center. That's the add-on in 2023, where the President of India, after she has taken charge, she has initiated the component of gender into the NRLM. And how to reach the last mile, very, very essential. Many a times, the government programs are only at the periphery level. It won't reach to the last mile. Collective and PRIs working together will legitimize the agenda of addressing intimate partner violence as development and governance concern. It can support the government efforts to reach rights, entitlements, and services to the last mile. In India, we have a beautiful three-tier system at the local self-governments. So let us see that the Panchayat Raj institutions, which are at the village, we call it as village panchayats. At the municipalities, we call it as municipal corporation or municipalities, where we have to integrate and also collectively both the women's collectives and the Panchayat Raj institutions and local self-governments, they have to work together to achieve the rights-based approach for entitlements and also the services. Then only we can reach the last mile. Otherwise, it's very difficult. how do we reach the last mile is the Panchayat Raj institutions are at the bottom level, which are at the ground level with a systematic approach from the government. It's a systematized, institutionalized. So that's why the collective efforts has to be institutionalized with the PRIs. And then the government's National Institute of Rural Development's NIRD and State Institutes of Rural Development SIRD, along with training academies, must invest additional time and resources for building capacities of women's collectives, grassroots elected leaders, and program functionaries on gender and violence. That is very essential because the Panchayat Raj institutions and the women elected at the grassroots, normally at PRIs, in many states, they made it 50% reservation. Although the Constitution has given 33%, many states have given 50%. So if this change we can bring it, it can help to capacitate the women's collectives, grassroots elected leaders, and also the program functionaries like frontline workers, ASHAs, ANMs, Anganwadi workers, and many others, those who are working like village organizers. So all those frontline workers will come together and work on a gender-based violence. Gender-based violence, we normally think that's a woman's issue. No, it's a public health issue. So we have to see from the health angle also and make the government health functionaries also into it. And what these NIRD and SIRD can do is they should develop a kind of a resource directory of these experts with experience and equal rights. Training pedagogies should be called upon by NIRD and SIRD to support their individual, develop roster of such experts and trainers, which is very, very essential. Like IMPRI can develop and also negotiate with NIRD and develop this roster and initiate those things so that the frontline workers will be trained on the violence against women with all the, whether it is at home, at work, at public space or online spaces, the harassment which is going on currently, to curb it and decrease it or to end it. We all have to do it. Next, please. This is what you have seen now that Mahatma Gandhi told, it's good to swim in the waters of tradition, but to sink in them is a suicide. Very important is we should not sink in it. We should not lose our confidence. We should be confident enough that we can reach it and start swimming. Once you make an effort to come up, then you will come up, you won't sink, and you can reach to the shore. Then from the shore, you can raise your voice. That's very important. So this is what my contact numbers. If you want to know more about our organization also, you can contact me. Today I'm in the field. I'm very sorry. I could not give a more ambience for you, but I think that my voice is very clear. And if anybody who wants to ask me any questions, it's most welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am, for sharing your insights and expertise with us. Before moving further, I'd like to apologize and correct my mistake. Our honorable speaker, Dr. Keerthi Bollineni, is the president of Vasavya Mahila Mandal in Vijayawada. Her generous social contributions have transformed the lives of countless women and children. Now, I request Vibhuti ma'am to kindly give her remarks on the session. And in the meanwhile, participants can either use the raise hand feature or put their questions in the Q&A box. Over to you, ma'am.
Dr. Keerthi Bollineni, for such an inspiring presentation and having faith in collective, because there is always, as you say, strength in number. I just wanted to know that there are popularly two models of one-stop crisis center. In Maharashtra, we have a one-stop crisis center in the casualty ward of government hospital, civil hospital, municipal hospital. Well, all the services converge to the survivor of violence. Andhra model is community-based model. Now, what are the, what is your evaluation of both these models?
In Andhra, also we have the one-stop centers and domestic violence centers as per the Act. Both are in existence. But what we felt is that there's an alternative models which is required for the criminal justice system. So that's why we joined hands with the police, because if we just go to the one-stop center in Vijayawada, also we have in the hospital with all these services from police, hospital, counseling and all those things. But again, they have to go to the refer to the police only. So the sensitization of the police is very much necessary. And here, the people have to come to the center, one-stop centers. But there, the community volunteers, Mahila Mitra, they are in the vicinity and they are available for the women when they need it 24/7. It's a voluntary service. It's not a paid service. So it's a sustainable model.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So that is not going to.
Thank you for your comments, ma'am. Now we open the floor to questions from the participants. Once again, you can either use the raise hand feature or put your questions in the Q&A box. So we have one question from Rejani Pavitharan. How do we extend the discussions on gender and gender-based violence at local levels and panchayats and wards?
How do we do is, almost all the panchayats, they are elected by the local people, the village people. So we have to go and meet the panchayat sarpanch and also the village officer and the ward members. 50% or 33% of the ward members are women. As a man or woman, forget about it. Go and talk to the sarpanch and tell them that what is the issue that is in the village and what is required for them, the interference from the PRI side. So that negotiation is very important and lobbying with that PRI is very essential. That is the first step. And the second step is ask the PRI to develop it with your help, to develop a model to address the violence against women in their village and whether they can resolve in the panchayat that the panchayat is committed to reduce the violence against women or to end the violence against women in our village. So that gives a kind of a commitment from the PRI. And also make the politicians, whoever comes to that village, first start the meeting to talk about the violence or the safety of the woman for 2 minutes before any meeting. Ask them to talk of it. That is a kind of a political will which shows. And the fourth one is let the women come together, the women self-help groups, and raise the voice against the violence against women, and the others can join together.
Thank you, ma'am. This brings us to an end of the Q&A session. We thank Dr. Keerthi Bollineni for not only sharing this. Okay, sorry, we have another question. Many higher educational institutions engage with community as a part of government department, order, guidelines, or UGC letters requiring them to do so. And in most of the cases, this does not end up as a sustainable model, but a quantitative report.
Yes, I rightly agree that we do have NSS programs. It's almost like an eye wash. They don't have, because we insist the NSS to join with us. I can tell you one example where we are working towards to make India child marriage free by 2030, which is SDGs. So we are asking the NSS with the Higher Educational Department of Government of Andhra Pradesh, join hands with us to end the child marriages. But still we haven't got a nod for them. what is required is the students in that college itself, no need to work in the extra hours also. The college itself, they can make a bus, having an elocution, essay writing, or mob. Even mobs they can do in the streets or malls. So the innovative way they can do it, and also on the social media, they can create a buzz. Even Tweetathon, they can do it. But what is lacking is the NSS or any other programs which are now like an event mode. So what we should need is every person, when they come to that role, they change the theme or which is likelihood for them. No, once they take a theme, it should be for 5 years, 10 years. Then intensively those NSS volunteers can work. And I don't blame the students, but I just tell that all the coordinators and those who are giving the orders, they should also see that it's a sustainable model within the education system itself. Then we can reduce lot of violence against our girls. And
to some extent, environmental clubs have been able to do that. Because I know some in a couple of colleges in Mumbai, those who were oriented to environmental issues, they have sustained it. They have formed an alumni association and they have taken concrete project of cleaning water bodies or converting garbage into a garden. And it has been result oriented. A lot of motivation. So teachers are highly motivated, and that's why they inspire students. They become the role model for that. But I think for gender-based violence, it is mostly a tokenism, so far as the educational institutions are
it's all based on the norms and traditions.
Correct.
Of patriarchy. That's why they don't take it up. Environment, they can take it up very easily.
Correct.
There is one more question.
Yeah.
Where, with regard to domestic violence, how mental agony, not physical assault, for a woman, for a psychotic husband will be addressed, and what can a woman ask for? Okay. I can suggest that when we talk of violence against women, it's not only physical violence. It is physical, emotional, psychological, sexual, and financial. And any other violence or abuse is a violence. So that we should take it. And how do we take it up? These things is many a times when the wife tells that the husband needs to have any kind of counseling like that, they don't accept it. So that's why we should be very logical. Both should go to a counseling center, both, not blaming on one person, but to go together is very important in the marital relations. So that's why one of my suggestions is to go together to a psychologist, convince him, and then go there, or with one of your family friends or in your friend circle, talk to them, and they can also come and talk to both of you, and they can even take you to a family counseling center. That will be more appealing than having a kind of a fight in between those people. And the second one is, once any kind of if there is a severity, then it is very much needed with your parents or in-laws have to intervene in it. Because nowadays what I am seeing is the wife thinks says I can deal it. No, sometimes we need to have the family support or the friend support or some colleague support. So take it and come out of the crisis first, that crisis home, and then start working for them, either negotiation or to end up. That's what I did.
Recently, like if you see Bombay family courts, most of the divorces are initiated by economically independent, highly educated women with the complaint of gaslighting. So how does one deal with gaslighting? A person who is constantly attacking your self-esteem, your dignity, insulting you in public, killing your confidence by constantly contradicting. No? So these complaints have increased in the family courts.
Yes.
And they ask for irretrievable breakdown of marriage and mutual consent.
We are in a transitory period, ma'am, that going from a dependency on the man to an independent economically, and which leads to the social independence and all those things. So in the transitory period, where the women are mentally changed and also they are growing education now, but whereas the men are there only, the mindset and all those. Very few men are very, very supportive for the women when they are growing up. So that's why we need to have these sessions for men also. Gender sensitization sessions. For men, we have to conduct more sessions so that the men will get sensitized, as we do at the Workplace Post Act. We have to conduct these sessions and trainings for the men also. Let us try with a new method and start sensitizing them. Whether it is not a success or a failure, but making an attempt is not wrong.
Very important.
So, thank you.
Do you have male volunteers in your group?
Yes.
Because talking to men, because that's very important.
We have even now in Visakhapatnam, we have the health program from menstruation to antenatal, postnatal, and menopause. We call them as Kushal Mitras. Men are also there. Out of 890 Kushal Mitras, 40 or 50 are men.
Thank you, ma'am. This brings us an end to the Q&A session. We thank Dr. Keerthi Bollineni for not only sharing this insightful talk with us, but also patiently answering our questions. Thank you, ma'am, and we hope to collaborate with you for future IMPRI events as well. I would now like to invite Advocate Dr. Albertina Almeida, lawyer and human rights activist from Goa, a visiting senior fellow at IMPRI. She will present her talk on sexual harassment at workplace. Welcome, ma'am. The floor is yours.
Thank you. So basically, I'm not sure if you all have had some kind of reading of the sexual harassment law or have some familiarity. It would be useful to know whether you know something already about the law or not, because then I can discuss some more things if you already have some level of familiarity with the law. I'm presuming you do, but I just like a quick response from all of you on this.
We can have a show of hands of the people who are aware.
It's difficult for me to figure out these hands, whose hands
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
Ma'am, I think it can
just speak.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that draft will be useful to us to get to prominent people to write, get to people to the
Yes. Most of them have, because they are raising.
Yeah, I guess as much. But
Yeah.
So everyone generally knows?
Yes.
Do I get that? Yeah.
Yeah.
So then I will not.
Always, anywhere you speak, even when you take lecture.
Sorry, is there some disturbance? I'm not sure if I'm getting. Okay. Yeah. Poll. Okay.
Please vote.
Okay.
83% are aware of it.
Okay.
Aware of the law. Yeah.
Okay. So I will begin with sharing my presentation. So considering that there are a few who do not know, I will maybe spell out quickly some aspects of the sexual harassment at the workplace law, and quickly also go down the history lane as to how this law came about. Yeah. So let me just, have I shared this? No. Have I shared it yet?
Not yet, ma'am.
Oh, okay. Just a minute. Sure. Yes. Yeah. Now?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We can go full screen.
So, is it showing?
Ma'am, it's showing, but not full screen yet.
Not full screen. You can make full screen.
Full screen. Okay. It's not showing as a full screen. Okay.
Yeah. Ma'am,
Just-
slideshow. Yeah.
Just slideshow. Okay. I always have this issue with the. Okay. Sorry. Slideshow, right? Right? Now it's okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
So now this issue of sexual harassment at the workplace is something that people have been concerned about for a very long time. Women have been experiencing sexual harassment at the workplace for a very long time. But it took off somewhere in the 90s that people began saying that it needs, there were laws in the Indian Penal Code that said that, certain forms of sexual assault are offenses under the law. And people could go there, or if there was a rape in the context of the workplace, people could go and file a complaint at the police station and take the benefit of that those provisions in terms of filing a case. However, it was there were some limitations that were there, and on account of which there was a demand for the section for a specific law, or some kind of specific provisions to deal with sexual harassment at the workplace. So I will quickly run you through some of the cases that where this issue came up. So one of them is the Bauri Devi case, which I think you all know. I have also to say that although there is a law now, the provisions of the law now do not require that we do not disclose the names of complainants. But here is a situation where she herself has been volunteering. She volunteered that to have her name disclosed, and she has been creating an awareness herself about this issue in various places. And for that, she knew that it was necessary to make a specific reference, because otherwise it becomes like we are talking in the air. So that is how we are referring to her. Now, who was Bauri Devi? Bauri Devi was basically working in a government program as a Sathin, as she was called, as they were called, the designation. And they were employees who had to go, employees from the government department who had to, as in contractual kind of employees, if I understand it right, who had to go around, door to door to explain to kind of, create certain kinds of awareness on social issues. So this included to talk about the consequences, the adverse consequences of child marriage, to kind of persuade people to not, so that they will not perform child marriages. So that was the thing. And so she was, as part of this process, she was going around door to door to carry out this campaign. And it appears that she was highly successful, and which got the community that prided itself that they're so great that they can get their daughters married so so at such a young age. So that is how they felt challenged by her successful campaigning about child marriage, and they decided to teach her a lesson. And at one point, when she was going in the course of her door-to-door work, at some point they gang raped her. So the persons from this community, in order to teach her a lesson. So we realize from this that, so we are always talking about the law, but I would also like us to look at some of these issues in history to understand, because when we are talking of sensitization or orientation, we need to be aware of the kinds of issues involved. Often when a woman complains of sexual harassment, people say, oh, she must have asked for it, or she doesn't look good anyway, who would want to rape her? As if sexual harassment is an act of lust. So here was a case where it was very clear that they wanted to teach her a lesson, and therefore they decided to gang rape her. This has nothing to do with anything to do with looks or no looks. So the point is that that drove home the point that sexual harassment is an act of power. It is not necessarily an act of lust. I'm talking about this because we may have a law, but if these concepts are not clear to the practitioners of that law, or to committee members, or to the workers, then what will happen is that they will fall back on these traditional understandings and then say that here is a case where this is not this is this is an act of lust, and you will start looking sympathetically at the person who is the respondent, because you think that it's an act of poor thing, he fell for her kind of scenario. So for that reason, it's important to look at these specificities of these cases that ultimately led to the evolution of the legislation as we have it today. So now, as far as Bauri Devi, the other aspect was that, you see, normally we understand a workplace as an office or a factory. So here was a situation where we could see that she's like on the field. So that is how it was understood that the definition of the workplace needs to be expanded to look at any scenario that arises in connection, or any situation in connection with the workplace. So that is why today's workplace definition under the sexual harassment law, workplace doesn't mean only if you are sexually harassed in the office in which you work, but if you go on the field as part of your work, then that is also a workplace. If you are going to some conference as part of your work, or that's your workplace. So that is how these definitions have been expanded of the meaning of the word workplace. Now you also had this as a result, now Bauri Devi's case is like been a long drawn case, and there were judgments that she met with. You could understand the psychology of those times, and I mean, which is still prevalent to an extent today, and which is why we have to look at what are the challenges today still. So in this in the course of the the journey through the various courts, at one stage the court where her case was being heard said that upper caste men, because she happened to be from the marginalized caste, so those men were from the upper caste. As I said, they wanted to teach her a lesson because they felt that their community was facing an affront, and they wanted to teach her a lesson, and they used rape as a weapon. So the court said upper caste men cannot rape a Dalit woman, meaning to say they were then this kind of, if you have this kind of mentality, we forget that there is a dual nature in this caste system also. So at one level they practice untouchability, and at another level they are what shall we say, they very conveniently break these untouchability barriers, they break these untouchability barriers. So you see that there are all these issues. In terms of today, I also want to say that Bauri Devi she might be very comfortable everywhere else, but at her home she still faces. So we see how deep rooted and deep seated these issues are. She may not be facing sexual harassment, but she still faces challenges at her back home because people don't accept the idea that she's gone to town with the whole issue. Now, because of the Bauri Devi case, because of some other cases also that had happened around the time, that is, one is of an IAS officer against an IPS officer. Now, that is this case of Rupam Deol Bajaj versus KPS Gill. Here again, this is all before there were Vishaka guidelines or the law. So now Rupam Deol Bajaj was bottom pinched at a party by this KPS Gill, who was a powerful, I mean, he was the DGP of that, I think it was Punjab. Yes. So now in that case, she was at a party, and obviously there are work equations, and a police officer, DGP of police is definitely very powerful. So it is in that sense it could be considered as although they were at a party, they whatever happens there and her resistance to it will have a bearing on her work, because he is considered so powerful. So that is why it was seen as a case of sexual harassment at the workplace. Then there was another case. Okay, the other issue was that they had said then that in Rupam Deol Bajaj's case, there was this comment that it's a very trivial thing if she's being bottom pinched. So at that time, this was the discussion that you can't sort of grade things for this purpose, because if somebody feels it as a bodily violation, it's not about whether it's a very, very tiny thing or it's a what is called tiny, or whether, because it's about the thing that somebody has been able to cross their boundaries and has dared to cross their boundaries and invaded on a woman's privacy or her her bodily autonomy. So this was therefore something that these were also issues, the kind of issues that were discussed at that time. Then there was the case of the Secretariat sex scandal. Before that, in this KPS Gill case, there was this other thing, and which I've also found even today. They said, oh, KPS Gill is a terrific officer. He kind of handled the whole Punjab problem at one point of time. The whole, they said what they called terrorism in Punjab, and it was handled by him very effectively. And this is an issue that we always face, that we are not saying whether or not he handled that is another issue altogether. And this thing of any grievance against sexual harassment is not about how he handled that case. Whether he handled it well or not, we are not on that at all at the moment. Even assuming he handled it well, that doesn't mean that that's a license, therefore, to do anything else, as to commit any offenses, to violate a woman's body. No. So he might have handled something well, but that doesn't mean. So I've also dealt with a case where somebody said, where it was said that this person has written books on, like lots of books on cabinet governance. So he's written books, and if he's written them well, so great. But that doesn't mean anything in terms of sexual harassment. So we cannot conflate these issues, and we need to discuss them separately. Now, we also had this other case, this is a case in Goa. It didn't become a case in the sense that that woman never went to complain at the police station, because at that point of time when these things were in this form, it was very difficult. Can you imagine a woman who is working as a contract employee, as a group of employees to the speaker, who are employed by the speaker of the Legislative Assembly? What would happen if she goes to the legislative employee? First of all, it's kind of a vague contractual situation. So, And rightly so, because what she did was to bring it out in the public, come out in the open. When she came out in the open, as predictable, 21 employees, the remaining 21 employees from the thing gave a character certificate to the speaker saying he's a very wonderful person. And he, to say that, so here you can see, imagine, and that's where we come to the crux of the issue of the workplace. When it's at the workplace, the witnesses will be related to the workplace generally, and who is going to come in response to a complaint against the boss, because they run the risk of being fired if they come as witnesses. So that is why this woman did not complain at that point of time, but she raised enough of an issue, and with the support of women's groups, it was created enough of a stink for him, women's groups, individual activists, etc., or concerned citizens. It created enough of a stink for him to resign as speaker. And then at the next election, at the election that followed, there was also this that was done, that he was contesting again for to be elected from his assembly seat, and he was not elected because we did a campaign. We did not, otherwise as women's groups, we do not participate in like in canvassing. We have not been participating in canvassing for a political party or against a political party. But on that occasion, what we did was we distinguished between that and to say no to a person who is involved with who commits sexual harassment. And here you may well ask that how do you know? So we had to kind of do an inquiry at our own levels, because we realized that there is a problem with the kind of due processes there are. It's something on the lines of how we have the Me Too cases today, because the Me Too cases are coming from a scenario where the due process is not addressing their concerns. So, and it has other implications. Like, as I said, in the Secretariat sex scandal case, the people coming forward, they could be maybe not encouraged in the workplace, because the workplace, especially if that person has favor with the employers, or that person has got certain exceptional talents, then the employers want him. So then they will try to find ways to kind of support this person. So then they will not address the complaint, or they will try to tiptoe around it. So these are some of the things that still persist even today, which we need to address. Some issues have been addressed with the law. And then you have the Nirbhaya case. This may not have been to do with sexual harassment at the workplace as such, but because the laws relating to rape and sexual harassment were subjected to scrutiny by the Justice Verma Committee. The Justice Verma Committee also deliberated, and women's groups gave responses to the issue of sexual harassment at the workplace. And it is after that, although from the time, okay, before we come to the Justice Verma Committee recommendations and the law as it is now. So because of these cases of Bauri Devi, Rupam Deol Bajaj, the Secretariat sex scandal, and a couple of other cases that women's groups had the experience of the need for special law to deal with sexual harassment at the workplace. As I said, there was laws on sexual harassment, but not every aspect of sexual harassment. There were penal provisions, but there was no specific law to deal with the forms of sexual harassment that today that we are talking about, and especially to do with harassment at the workplace. So therefore, based on the experiences of all these groups, an organization called Vishaka fought a case, filed a writ petition, which challenged this in the Supreme Court, which said that not having a law to deal with sexual harassment at the workplace is affecting women's right to work. So it went beyond the traditional explanations about who's responsible, etc., to say that you needed a safe space for women. And if the women do not have a safe space, their right to work is affected, their right to practice or a profession of their choice is affected, besides the rights to equality and their right to life and livelihood. Right to work as in right to life and livelihood. So, so the court said, the Supreme Court then, based on this challenge, said that the state should have enacted a law, because we can see that these rights are being violated. But it's not their job to enact the law, but till such time as the state does not enact a law, they're providing certain guidelines which are mandatory in nature. So that is how the Vishaka guidelines came about, where they visualized a special mechanism, because not everybody wants to go to the police station. Plus, if you file a criminal case, the standard of proof is very high. You have to prove it beyond reasonable doubt. So here the court said that we will not need, what you need is, because for a woman to be able to go and complain at the police station and then go through that entire rigmarole in the criminal court is quite a challenge. So therefore, if she establishes basically that she was sexually harassed, like a kind of a basic case, where it's seen that it's very likely that she was sexually harassed, as she claims, then that is enough. And that is, so the Vishaka judgment put in place a committee at the workplace. Now the question would be, again, you would face this, that it's a committee from the workplace itself. That is why they thought of this external member. But that external member can't be just anybody, or bring in some politician and plant him there. It had to be somebody who has faced, who is versed with issues of sexual harassment. So earlier, there was a very specific provision that that person had to be a representative of an NGO. At this point, it's not exactly as explicit as that. So this is what the Vishaka guidelines had. They also realized that sometimes, because of the nature of issues, women may not speak so easily, and the very fact of being a woman, it might be possible. Of course, social conditioning issues are there, and that's something we need to discuss. But as such, by the sheer fact of being a woman might be able to understand what it means to be sexually harassed, because by and large, every single woman has faced it at some point of time or the other. If not in the bus or somewhere or the other, some element of it has been generally faced. So the thing is that the assumption is that a woman would understand, and therefore she had to be a chair, and there was and more than 50% or at least 50% had to be women. So this was the requirement in the guidelines for that mechanism that would inquire into grievances of sexual harassment, give their recommendations, and then the employer would take action. So this is what basically the Vishaka judgment was about. But those guidelines, see, one thing is to have guidelines which are brief in a judgment, and another thing is to have a law which is very detailed and which spells out everything very explicitly. So from 1997, with the experience of the Vishaka guidelines, women's groups have been saying, and they had understood by then, that it's not enough to have a law or guidelines, but you have to monitor them. So they were monitoring the implementation of the Vishaka guidelines, and found that a lot of places were not setting up the committees. So women's groups were doing kind of like a survey. People have set up committees, have the workplaces set up, private as well as government. What happens to a woman who is, like a vendor in the workplace? She's a worker, but she's a vendor, so there's no employer in that strict sense of the term. So how do issues like hers get addressed if she's sexually harassed while she's vending her, her goods? So these were some of the issues that did come up. And so groups were discussing this, and various drafts were being circulated, which people had drafted, women's groups had drafted, the commission, National Commission for Women had drafted, various other bodies had drafted, you know, these sexual harassment law drafts. But you know, how it is that you always need to push, and it needs some kind of a large kind of a revolt to make this happen. So it was when there was this upsurge, when you know, sort of outrage over the Nirbhaya case, which was, of course, that is the pity that we wait for something as you know, as what shall we say, as grave, if one may say that, or for want of a better word, where a woman is reduced to a vegetative state, raped and reduced to a vegetative state. That is when it's a pity that it reaches that stage when it stirs our conscience. But laws do not get enacted only unless something like this happens. So it is then that discussions began happening at the state, you know, from the government side. The government took it seriously to enact the law, because as part of the Justice Verma committee, which was constituted after the outrage on the Nirbhaya case, the Verma committee asked for suggestions, and the suggestions were given. So the suggestions were given, and then taking those suggestions into account, the Sexual Harassment of Women at the Workplace Prevention, Prohibition and Redressal Law was passed. So it's about sexual harassment of women at the workplace, Prevention, Prohibition and Redressal Act. Okay, so as I said, it was founded on certain basic provisions of the Constitution were taken into account. Besides the international conventions that India is a signatory to, like CEDAW, that is the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. This definition you probably all know, but just to quickly go through it, it is about sexual harassment is defined not simply because earlier the understanding was sexual harassment means what popularly is called molestation, which means physically touching a woman on her private parts. That is what was the understanding of sexual harassment. So it was necessary to understand that sexual harassment goes much beyond this. And yes, physical contacts and advances are part of do constitute sexual harassment, but making sexually colored remarks or demand or request for sexual favors, showing pornography or any other unwelcome physical, verbal or non-verbal conduct of sexual nature is also sexual harassment. But besides this definition, we also had this, that, you know, there are sometimes certain acts may not by themselves be sexual harassment. So the thing is that, for example, if a woman does not yield to the, you know, there is some kind of a thing in the air that if this person gives promotions if you yield to his advances. So so maybe he hasn't made an advance to her as such, but because she's not one of those who yields, therefore she faces detrimental treatment, or somebody who yields gets preferential treatment in her employment. So the point is, or there is a threat about her present or future employment status. So now, if she gets preferential treatment, let's say she's not the detrimental treatment, let's say. So that means she's not given leave when she wants it, even if she wants it badly, and even when she can be given leave because she's the immediate superior, she's the subordinate of this person who is sexually harassing her. So then, when she's not given leave, if you say, he's not giving me leave, so he has sexually harassed me, it will sound odd. So one has to look at the context in which she's not being given leave, or she's not being given a promotion, where it is connected, as I said, this is section 3 of the law. If it occurs or is present in relation to or connected with any act or behavior of sexual harassment. So these by themselves may not be sexual harassment, but if they are connected to these acts, then this whole thing is looked at cumulatively in the process of the inquiry. Also, humiliating treatment likely to affect her health or safety. You know, where somebody causes continuous trauma, then then to affect, you know, where because she's not giving in to sexual harassment, let's say, is constantly taunting her and constantly saying something like, you know, you don't have any brains, you are a good for nothing or something. Now, by itself, maybe that humiliation would not amount to sexual harassment if he were just saying that. But if it is linked to acts of sexual harassment or a behavior of sexual harassment or connected with it, then it would amount to sexual harassment. Now, the employer-employee definitions have also been widened over the years, because you see, now who's an employee? Now, what is to happen is that many times women would not complain because they risk losing their jobs, because if they complained, that is why you needed a special law, as I said earlier. So the question was, how do you deal with this situation? Therefore, employee was defined. So also many people don't get any employment appointment letters and all that. So how will they complain? The moment they complain, they may turn around and say this person is not an employee. You see, the whole work scenario is also quite this. So also situations where, say, their subcontractor, some contractor of theirs, let's say there's a painting contractor, and the painting contractor has brought in workers, and they cause sexual harassment to an employee. Now, this would also be sexual harassment at the workplace. She's faced it at the workplace to start with, and those people are connected with that workplace. So therefore, that would also come within, she would be, similarly, the employees of that contractor. So for example, if some, you know, for cleaning services, they provide, the contractor provides those services to the workplace. So if that employee faces sexual harassment, it is the principal employer's duty to address this issue, because she's faced sexual harassment at the principal employer's, you know, the workplace which the principal employer manages. Now, the definition of employer was also formulated to pinpoint responsibility, because then otherwise it was, oh, this one is the employer, that one is the employer. Who's really the employer? Who has to take decisions? So it was formulated to say that the employer is the person responsible for the management, supervision, and control of the workplace. In the context of government offices, it's the head of the department who is basically overall responsible for management, supervision, and control of the workplace. So now, as I said, definition of workplace was expanded. It even included, now it includes this in the law. It even includes transportation. Suppose there's a bus transport provided by the employer, then that transportation, you know, any sexual harassment that takes place in that during that transportation is also covered. Now, dwelling place or a house, this is to take into account that, like we said, cleaning services, you know, in the maybe employees' quarters, or you know, let's say the dwelling place. Now, dwelling place would mean also, for example, when it comes to a domestic worker. So all these would come within. So for a domestic worker, that dwelling place where she's staying and working, maybe if she's a live-in domestic help, that would be her, or a house would be her workplace. So it's not, you know, otherwise, normally people visualize workplaces as factories and all, and they do not take into account unorganized labor. So here, I also, I mean, I've not spelled it out here on the slide, but I want to say that, say, for example, if she's, as I said, if a street vendor is vending, then that street vendor's workplace is the street where she's vending, or the marketplace where she's vending. So those are all workplaces that that are recognized as workplaces today. Now, here we come to the crux of the issue, that we may have mechanisms, we may have all this, but people are not reporting. And there are all these issues, because people tell them, why are you reporting now after so many years? But you have so many reports which tell you, for example, there are film stars who have complained about sexual harassment after years, because they say that if they reported then, they would not have been able to reach the status of their career that they have reached today, because they would have been suppressed then itself. So the point is, there are reasons sometimes why people speak after so many years, once they are settled and they can speak. Or like there's this disbelief. This person, it couldn't have happened. Sitting on various internal committees, I've heard this. And people said to me, this person, no. That other person, because we have our own stereotypes of what a person who's a sexual harasser looks like. So the point is that here is a situation where people then don't believe, because this person doesn't look like that. He doesn't have long hair or wear earrings or something like that. So this person can't be, and he looks very sober. So sometimes, people with the biggest halo around their head seem to be sexual harassers. So we cannot go by those kinds of impressions. We have to look at each case on its own merits, and not start on a note of disbelief. As I said, I've come across this, and then I've been able to show them sometimes when in the process of the inquiry, the woman produces, like, say, a message on her mobile sent by this person, and messages. And then they know that because it's come from his number to her number. Now they can't disbelieve anymore. So then that's when they think, okay. But till then they say, I don't believe you. Or what were you wearing? The whole thing of what were you wearing? Are you exaggerating? Why are you making a mountain out of a molehill? Do you have proof? And then again, the question is that people think that proof means you have to have written, like, like this mobile messages or some handwritten things. So how will somebody have proof? Sometimes it may happen without anybody being present. Or there are still these notions that you should have screamed. You didn't scream, you didn't resist, etc. So these are the kinds of issues that are there, due to which till today many women do not come to report. And these are things that we need to address very seriously at this point of time, because we may have the mechanisms and we're looking at that as of now, but if we don't address this is the crux of it. Yes, we need to know that if an employer requires performance to job standards, but he's not couching it in requiring performance to job standards, for example, or if he or she they are giving constructive feedback, or working conditions, like, say, if there are bad work conditions, I mean bad work conditions as in occupational health hazards. Now this doesn't become sexual harassment, because this is harassment, this is denial of rights of workers, but it doesn't amount to sexual harassment. Okay. Now, as I said, this law is different in the sense that it's casting. It's not only dealing with redressing when somebody has a grievance, but it casts certain responsibilities on employers to provide a safe working environment. As you know, in the recent RG car case, the doctors have been saying that there should be some kind of a for the on-call doctors during night duty, etc. There should be a restroom, so that which is like, a specific restroom where they are within the safe confines of their restroom, and they don't need to go and rest in a seminar hall or in some such place. So this is all about the responsibility of employers to provide a safe working environment. The other thing about displaying it, that people need to know that this is prohibited, this will not be tolerated, and what are the consequences, and then they need to know whom they can complain to. So the internal committees members list, they all need to be aware of. Now I come to the orientation and sensitization programs. So orientation programs are happening where whatever some of the things that I've talked about what is sexual harassment, what is workplace, is being talked about, but there is no sensitization. So what happens is that very often it is like, oh, it was consented, because she was conversing with him. People produce conversations to show that the woman was conversing. But sometimes she's compelled to keep up to it because that person is her superior. And you know, if she doesn't, then she will face consequences at her workplace. She doesn't know that she doesn't have to. So therefore, these issues of consent need to be understood, not simply in terms of, okay, she also was corresponding with him, so she consented. You know, the point is she may have to consent because he is a superior or he is somebody who is authorized to instruct, you know, give her work. So we have to realize that this thing of, does a woman have agency? Does she have can she consent? These are issues that women's groups have raised over time on various issues. So it's not about, you know, simply taking consent for its face value by just looking superficially. Similarly, what autonomy she has, should her autonomy, bodily autonomy, not be respected? These are the things that should come out through the sensitization programs. Therefore, orientation programs are not about saying blah, blah, blah. This is sexual harassment. This is the workplace. This is the, who is the employer. This is who you can complain to. This is what the committee is all about. Because that may not bring out these issues. And these are very important because we realize that with all these definitions are important, not to say they're not important. But with all this, you still have people who do not come forward, or where they come forward that they in turn themselves are humiliated because it's not understood that they really never gave their consent, because it's not understood that there is something called bodily autonomy and privacy. So these things are very important to be focusing on when it comes to training and orientation programs, for example. Similarly, for the IC itself, it's not just about the workers, but the committee members themselves may be so prejudiced and biased. The other thing that the duty of the employer is to provide, see, very often the internal committee is struggling. They do not have secretarial staff. They may not have a laptop made available to them for keying in the statements of the complainant or the witnesses. So, so they're struggling with getting all that. All this causes considerable delays, and then there's very little time left for the thing to be completed. So there's no staff or you know, infrastructure provided. There is no proper space also sometimes. Even if they're a big organization, they don't have a space for these things where they can be conducted with some level of privacy. Then there is a need for, of course, that's there in the law, that they have to assist the aggrieved woman to seek justice if she wants. It's not as if she complains to the employer, it is restricted to only complaining to the employer. She can also seek punitive measures, which will be punitive as in under the India, the new law now is Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita. She can seek the you know, she can go to the police station as well. So both cases will get handled. It's not like only one case will get handled. Both can get handled because the scope of that is different. That is to punish him with consequences of imprisonment, fine, etc. This one is about consequences at his workplace because of what he has done at the workplace. So, so the two can go together. And if a woman wants to, she needs to be told that she can go to the police and complain. And she needs also to be told that she's what you call that, that she can seek justice there. And then the employer, she can also do the two together. Okay, and then there is this monitoring of the timely submission of reports. So every internal committee is supposed to give annual reports, and the employers to make sure that the internal committee does this timely submission of reports to the district officer in each district of the state, of each state, so that there's some kind of oversight on this. But I do not think this is very effectively happening. I do not see that. And reports are being sent mechanically. So the internal committee, as I said, the law talks of its composition, redressal, inquiry process, and penalties for non-compliance. So there are penalties if you don't even constitute the committee, there are penalties. The composition broadly, as I have already explained, I'm not going into detail. You can find that in the law. The redressal process is that they can approach the committee. There some places have what is called a she box, where people can post their things, and then the committee can then try and call for an inquiry based on what they find in that she box. And then there's an inquiry process. It is not as if someone complains about sexual harassment, then it's established that it's sexual harassment. She has to be able to produce some reasonable evidence. Evidence as in, it could be her statements, it could be witnesses. It doesn't have to be, as I said, proof doesn't mean, or evidence doesn't only mean hard copy or written stuff or something sent by email or some or by any social media or on social media or through any social media. Okay. Now the composition issue, the challenges today are because, first of all, this committee is supposed to be, but if it is somebody senior, the thing is that this committee is always composed by the employer itself. So constituted. So therefore, it's likely to have people who they find favor with. And then the external person, they might find very few external persons, and they might end up with some person sometimes who they do not find favor with. But that also could be manipulated, because the words person versed with issues of sexual harassment is very vast. So it's like, when they have to incorporate what are called social workers, there are people who are called social workers. They're basically people from their political parties who belong to their particular wings and who may have absolutely no sensitivities on these issues. So they might tell a woman that you have to, these are normal things that happen at a workplace, etc. So you can have such people also, but it's a big question mark who is versed with issues of sexual harassment. So also that since it concerns, a person a person's services can even be terminated, a person can be dismissed for causing sexual harassment. So the inquiry has to be proper, because we cannot have a situation where somebody just makes an allegation and the person is dismissed by just quickly asking those people and then making a letter. Their statements have to be recorded. There should be an opportunity for cross-examination. All this is there. So, but the thing is that for somebody who's not a lawyer, they may not understand. So they'll say, why do you need to have her cross-examined? Poor thing, she has already gone through such a lot. So how should she be, why should she be cross-examined? But that is something called principles of natural justice, which I'm coming down to. Plus, there are individual service regulations. So principles of natural justice require that everybody should get a fair hearing. They should know what is the charges against them and be able to defend. For example, if somebody said that so-and-so sexually harassed her on a particular day when after she reported for duty at a particular, more or less at a particular time at so-and-so institution, then if the master roll shows that she never was there, that would be his defense to say that she wasn't there and she's cooking up a case, or she wasn't there or he wasn't there because he was somewhere else and he produces evidence. So that he has to have a chance to produce his evidence as well. And then the committee has to weigh it all and see if there is a likelihood that this could have happened. And not that it definitely happened, it's very difficult to establish through these processes. But if there's a high likelihood that it could have happened, then the committee will come to a finding of guilt. There are also interim reliefs, because what happens is while an inquiry is going on, people may people may intimidate the witnesses or something, the respondent or his people. So there are some interim reliefs sometimes that the woman may choose to move out to be in another place, or may require him to be in another place so that he will not interfere with the course of justice. So, or, he may be asked to go on leave for a few days, etc. Then adequate time to every party within the time frames provided. So there has to be adequate time to given. Of course, we have this thing that it has to be disposed of within a certain number of days, but within those number of days, there to be spaces between one witness and another, so that the respondent can and also the complainant, you know, when the respondents give their statements or his witnesses give their statements, they have the right to cross-examine them. So they should be able to have enough time, because neither the complainant nor the respondent may be familiar with these processes of the law, what they can ask, what they cannot ask. So they should be able, because they cannot engage lawyers here. So that's another thing. Documents that are relied on should be accessible to both parties. So if a complainant says he sent me these WhatsApp messages which amount to sexual harassment, then that printout or screenshot of those, printout of that screenshot should be made available to him to say, like, you see, this is what she's saying, so that he can say whether it's actually a thing or whether it's some morphed thing or whatever it is. So then the complainant has a right to have a handholder or a presenting officer in a government department, for example, and the respondent has a right to have some defense assistant. But as I said, no lawyers. Lawyers can be on the committee, but lawyers cannot be representing either party. Okay, there is also a process of conciliation, and but we have to be very careful, because there is a tendency, because of the amount of time these inquiries take, and everyone's kind of adding on to their work because of this inquiries, there's a tendency to sort of force the people to come to a conciliation. This is not fair on either the complainant or the respondent. But the complainant may also want to go for conciliation if she knows she has that option, because she basically wants that she should feel a sense of relief that she's addressed it, and it's she's got it across to him that it's not acceptable to her and he shouldn't do it in the future. So she should be left with the decision to decide whether or not, but she should be told. And if she opts for conciliation, then he should be asked, because it doesn't mean that he is ready for conciliation. He may say, no, she's made a charge against me and I'm here to defend myself against a charge. I'm not guilty. So if they're ready, if he's ready, then the process may involve a written apology. But it's very clear that there cannot be monetary consideration in this whole process when it comes to conciliation. Yeah. So I've broadly spoken about yes, and I will maybe stop sharing now. Yeah, you would, I guess,
Yeah.
floor should be open to question. Sorry.
Rishmita, you are muted.
Yeah. So thank you, ma'am, for sharing your insights and expertise with us. I'll now request Vibhuti ma'am to kindly give her remarks on the session. And in the meanwhile, participants can either use the raise hand feature or put the questions in the Q&A box. So over to you, ma'am.
Yeah. Thank you, Advocate Albertina, for such a comprehensive presentation and whole history of the struggle against sexual harassment at workplace. I would like to know your reflection on the Justice Hema Committee report and the efforts of the Women in Cinema Collective. You are muted.
Yeah. Let me be very honest. I've not really had the effort, time to kind of exclusively read that report extensively. So my comments would be quite maybe a bit superficial. But what I want to say is that actresses have long been like what is the word,
casting couch.
So yeah, so it's been that this has arisen here also. Many people have said that, but they've not come out in the open. And it is necessary to address this issue because as I said, even the people who came out in the Me Too have not what shall we say, they have come out after years. that is because they wouldn't have become the actresses, they wouldn't have had the fame they have today if they had to be raising these issues at that time. So really speaking, I think it's some of these issues which may have arisen in that context, but also are common to other contexts where people will not come forth because there are these issues of not being able to ascend what would I say, the career ladder.
But in this case, there are so many young and budding actresses who stuck out their neck, no? So,
yes.
Yeah.
True. But what I'm trying to say is that, which is why the committee could make these recommendations. But what I'm trying to say is, it was necessary because they've stuck out the necks. This report was possible. But what I'm trying to say is that this is very much what has been happening, and it's a good thing that that this report has. Let me just quickly. I'll just. Does everyone here have a copy of it?
Yeah, I'm sharing it on chat box.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I have downloaded. Yeah.
Okay. Because I was going to provide that to the
I'm sure.
yeah. Just a minute.
Yeah, it is. It is there. I have attached it.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you see it? It's there. It's there in the chat.
Yeah. Yes. Just a minute. I'm just putting it in.
No, because the actresses also say that even the committee members had so many very strong patriarchal bias, and the kind of advices they were given: you should dress up nicely, you should talk to men in a different way. Even when they were giving their testimony about this, they said it was a very painful even for them to face the committee member. Those who sit on such committee, they also have such a stereotypical notion about man-woman relationship. That is quite unnerving.
Yeah, but I think this is not what I would say is this is not restricted to the what you call that, to these people alone. So these issues are very much true. That's why I said that there is a need not just for saying that okay, this is sexual harassment, meaning just to kind of run through it. It is necessary to sensitize. Which is why I say that that's the challenge even now when it comes to sensitization. So now there are some reviews being done about this sexual harassment law at the moment by UN Women and other organizations. But and they are talking about this module. But my fear is because now the new genre of laws has got this component of awareness and sensitization. But I have seen that even, for example, sometimes when people are creating an awareness about domestic violence laws, they start with the note of false cases, or you should not be going to the to make a complaint at the drop of a hat, as if to say that is so. The whole training module is what shall we say, is designed on those lines. So it's not enough to say also you should have a training module, but we need to put out what needs to go into the training module. The entire feminist discussion, again, even if you say feminist discussion, it will not help, because there is feminist, there has many meanings, and each one will interpret feminist in their own way. So it's very important to talk of consent, autonomy, agency, privacy, which is what I said in my presentation. Also, if one is looking at, just a minute. the recommendations that they have made, some of them are the larger recommendations. Just come to that. See, for example, there are these meaning the recommendations are also in the nature of the context in which this sexual harassment is happening. So which is very important to note, because which are the points at which this where women become vulnerable is what it is addressing as well, this report. So for example, if in a particular, so this law is not only should be about prevention, about addressing a situation once it happens, but it's also about prevention. So therefore, the HEMA committee report is talking about these points of vulnerability also when it is making its recommendation, and that's another thing that definitely is important to take into account.
And also more women in more powerful positions. So in all the decision-making bodies of the film industry, there has to be representation of women.
Okay.
Currently, it is only old boys club.
Right.
Yeah. I have also shared handbook of Supreme Court of India's directory on combating gender stereotypes, which are the kind of language with the legal system should be using and the judges should be using. That is also there. It was put in public in 2023. But it is really sad that it took 7 years for HEMA committee report to come out. 2017 it was ready, and there was the conspiracy of secrecy around that.
Yes, and in fact, there's another state which is also talking about where they have also had,
Andhra,
and that report has not been announced. Yes, Andhra.
no,
Andhra
it's not announced.
Yes, Telangana.
Okay,
or whatever.
Yeah. Our previous speaker, Dr. Keerthi, she mentioned that.
Yes.
Participants, you are free to unmute and speak. You can even share your experience or ask questions or expand some of the points raised by Dr. Albertina. Yes, Mr.
Aruna Mirtham here. There have been, great strides done in this topic of harassment in the workplace. Now, I don't want to trivialize or downplay any of it, but given the fact that we have a very, very high informal sector in India, number one. Number two, you need training, certification for the internal committee members, plus all employees. Employees need to know what their rights and things are. And third, I've noticed in India, in the financial sector, when it comes to reporting and statutory requirements, it's all about compliance, not about transparency. We need to tick boxes, say this is done, this is done, this is done, rather than look at whether the spirit of the law has been followed. So given all that, particularly the very, very high informal sector, what is the significance of all this in the Indian context?
Yeah, thank you for that question, because that is something that the movement had been asking. And after the Nirbhaya case, when all this was being reviewed by the Justice Verma committee, there were recommendations made that this system, the Vishaka guidelines are not, were not, what shall we say, implementable in the context of informal sector. That is why the law, as it was enacted, came out with this thing of a local committee. Now, this local committee, like local complaints committee, like the internal committee in the workplace, because the informal sector may not have, and even more informal is the fishing, fisher women, the fish workers, meaning, who don't have a formal employer in that sense of the term. So there are all these persons in the, so now the law provided for the constitution of a local committee, which was supposed to be at a district level. But the problem with that is, for one, it's not sufficiently publicized. Number two, it's at a district level. So it's, see, your workplace, suppose a district is quite a big space. And to come all the way, secondly, there is no, for example, the woman doesn't know now, for example, in Goa, it's like not two districts, North Goa, South Goa. So in North Goa collector's office and in the South Goa collector's office, and that's like the quarters of that local committee. But there isn't a separate room. There isn't a way to make that complaint to that committee. People don't know who are on the committee. We have asked for it to be put on the websites. They've not put it on the websites. Not that the informal sector people are going to read what it is on the websites, but there has been no effort to create this training for people at these levels. So I think there needs to be some kind of a tie-up with the other legal mechanisms, like, you know, which may be there in the context of like the street vendor law. So, you know, to kind of where they have to also implement that law, create an awareness. In that, there has to be, in this module has to be inserted, because then where will be these awareness programs are conducted, where they are being conducted in workplaces. That also, even in the formal workplaces, they do it like a favor, as if you want to do a training program for them and tick your box. So you are asking for that program to be conducted. That is how they look at it, because that is also a fact that some NGOs want to tick their box. That's another story, but I will not get there. But so the point is that we need to reimagine also how we are creating an awareness. So it's not necessarily also always in the form of training programs. It can be little through clips which are going out through mainstream media. Anyway, it's full of advertisements. You might as well have an advertisement like this as well, so that people can be aware through. I'm talking